Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz singer Alexis Cole. She was born in New York, raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and these days she is in New York living out that jazz dream. Since she was a child, she has been performing. She just released a new 2016 CD called A Tribute to Paul Simon, Dazzling Blue, and it's loved by the critics and fans alike. She is well educated and very talented. She's performed with the likes of Fred Hersch, Eric Alexander, Matt Wilson, and the great Pat LaBarbara. Along with performing and recording, she is the head of the Jazz Voice program at SUNY Purchase, and she has plenty of thoughts on the world of jazz and her career path. Get to know Alexis and dig this interview, my friends.
I saw on your website all the activity that's going on, but I want, in your own words, kind of a overview of activity that's going on in your world these days.
I spend a couple of days a week teaching at SUNY Purchase. I have some undergrad and some master's students there in my studio, and it's really something that I enjoy and gives me a lot of pleasure and hope for the future of jazz, seeing these great students progress in their studies and learning myself by teaching them, as of course one does. So that's what I'm about to do today through Thursday. For 5 hours a day I go over there. Last month I was super busy. I went and did a week-long jazz festival at Akron, the University of Akron in Ohio, performing there with the great flautist Nestor Torres. And together we did a lot of workshops with the students and performances every night. That was a lot of fun. And I just got back from the Burnt Hills and Ballston Lake High School up in upstate New York, where I led clinics and also performed on a wonderful concert that they did combined with their jazz band and their jazz choir. And that was with the great trumpet player Tatum Greenblatt on that, working with the band as I was working with the choir. So that was really fun and interesting. Upcoming, I've got some performances in the city, in New York City, coming up in May that I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to be at the Knickerbocker for 2 nights, and I'm playing at the Tribeca Performing Arts Center, Pangea Cafe Noctambulo down in the Village, too. I have a gig there.
And then I want to kind of piggyback off of recent activity and ask you about your tribute to Paul Simon, Dazzling Blue. Talk to me about the afterglow of releasing this. How do you feel about it, and kind of what went into making this album?
We started researching it last April, so it's actually been a year now since it's been on my plate. I have very wonderful memories of my research period because I was actually in Germany for the Jazz Ahead conference, which happens around this time in Bremen. And during all my traveling of that trip, which, as you know, between the airports and the trains can be extensive, I had downloaded all the Paul Simon albums and was listening to every single song that he did in his solo career and, determining what would work for me. And obviously I had my favorites that I knew I would do, but I really wanted to survey his whole body of work to pick songs that, like, in a sort of objective way, not just the ones that maybe I had been more exposed to because of publicity or radio or whatever, but really to look at everything. So that was a really exciting part of the process, and, eliminating down, from his whole body of work to about 25 songs and then eliminating down to the 12 that we did was really exciting. Picking keys and writing arrangements and writing charts, that's all a fun part of the preparation. And then doing some rehearsals. I got together many times with Jeff Haynes, the percussionist. He lives pretty close by to me, so we would get together and go through the songs and think about them and think about layers of percussion and textures that we would use. So that was all an exciting part of production as well. And then rehearsing with the whole band and then recording. Those happened pretty quickly next to each other. So that was not as relaxed a part, but it all came together in the end. So I was grateful for that. And I loved all the beautiful textures and tones that Marvin Sewell, the guitarist, brought out with his playing and different effects and pedals that he uses. And just the way that these players really know how to use space and have a laid-back groove in everything they do made the project a success, I feel.
So let me ask you this. You grew up in New York, and give me an idea about your childhood, how you got involved with loving music, playing the piano, and singing.
Sure. I actually grew up in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, I'm from New York. I was born in Queens, but I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. My parents moved there when I was 1 year old. getting into music was pretty obvious for me. My father is a pianist and singer, and my mother's mother is also a pianist and singer, so music is on both sides of my family. I took Suzuki piano lessons from a very early age, like 6 years old. And even in preschool, I was singing and dancing, and my mother tells a great story of how she came to pick me up once at a preschool. She was always switching me to a new preschool because she was never satisfied, with the service at a given school. So she dropped me off there first day at a new preschool, and she came to pick me up, and I was apparently singing and dancing on a tree stump when she came to get me. So I think, nothing has changed since then. We are who we are. And, I really feel like I was between the familial, history with music and my own proclivity to entertain. I feel like my becoming a performer at least was pretty inevitable. And so I took Suzuki piano lessons from age 6 to about maybe 11 or 12, and then took some more traditional classical piano lessons. And then in high school, I went to the wonderful New World School of the Arts in Miami and studied theater there, and also had voice lessons with a wonderful teacher, Chris Arroyo. I feel like that experience was so formative because most singers and musicians never get to really study theater, and it really affected just my way of thinking about performing and what I do on stage. So I'm really grateful for that experience. And then when I was in high school, I got a gig with a jazz ensemble in Miami Beach, and they made me learn a bunch of standards to sing with them. And even though it was kind of a very humble gig, it really got me into jazz just in time to make decisions about where I would go to school. And instead of studying musical theater, thank God I was saved because I'm a terrible dancer and not a great actress either. So I was saved and ended up going to University of Miami for jazz voice. And I transferred out of there after 2 years to William Patterson in New Jersey, which was a great school, a great fit. And my wonderful teacher, Nancy Morano, was there, incredible vocalist and just a great person who really gave me a lot of wonderful perspectives that stayed with me through the years. And I waited a few years. I studied Indian classical singing in India. That was a great experience. And then I got my master's at Queens College up here in New York.
So in those formal environments, obviously learning about jazz and being a great singer happens on stage. But in those formal environments, you've had a lot of education. What did you learn about being a jazz singer?
Well, being a jazz singer is really just being a singer. And maybe being a singer is really just being a storyteller. I feel like the less effortful what we do looks like it is and is, the more we can just get caught up in telling the stories of the song. And that's where the real magic happens of what we do. It's not so much about, doesn't so-and-so have a pretty voice, or, that will last about 2 songs before people get tired of hearing your pretty voice. So it's really about storytelling and making that connection to the audience.
So let me ask you this. Playing live, performing live, you've been at Avery Fisher Hall, Lincoln Center. You've been at places all over the place that are considered prestigious. Does that luster ever wear off, or is there always that kind of the butterfly joy of going into something like that?
Oh, absolutely. No. Well, I don't know if it ever wears off. Maybe if I was doing that every night, it might. I can't imagine it would get old or lose its magic. But I'm a very detail-oriented person, so even though I would like those experiences to be all glamour, and, I would just like to float onto the stage from my dressing room or the green room, I'm always thinking about the lighting and the arrangement, and I'm going to come in after this many bars, and, there's always the details, and there's a lot of, a wardrobe, thing might be happening, you never know, or it's never as fun and glamorous as I think it will be in its entirety. It's work, because I feel like if it wasn't work for me, it's the audience who's supposed to enjoy the glamour and the beauty of what we're doing, and my job is to focus on the details and then to be able to create the artwork when I'm there in place. But everything leading up to that moment of getting on stage is always filled with, my, maybe I'm a little, I don't know, like a little too focused on all the myriad things that are going on. I strive to find a place of relaxation, but I think what I have found is a place of acceptance if the lighting is not what they put it on at sound check, or if something doesn't sound quite right, or there's a person being obnoxious in the front row. I feel like, through practice, I've come to just be able to kind of ignore those things and know that we just go on and we do the show, and it's all good. So
Yeah,
I'm a little
absolutely.
bit of a neurotic performer, I really get into the details, but at the same time, then when I can sort of let go and just be in the moments of the song, it's, for me, in my personal experience, a very powerful thing, and I hope that the audience feels that with me.
So let me ask you this. You perform with a lot of big shots in the jazz world, like Fred Hersch, Eric Alexander, Matt Wilson, Pat LaBarbara, lots of people. What do you learn from being around people like that have been in the business for so long and are so good on stage?
I think it just elevates the performance in general, and it elevates my professionalism. And I feel like their focus, because they're so good at what they do, their focus is on the creative aspect of the moment. And so I want to share in that with them and be in that moment with them. Yeah.
So you've received a lot of awards in your career, the Swing Journal Gold Disc Award and many others. What award have you received that kind of surprised you? Not your favorite award, but one that you were like, I did not expect that.
Maybe can I tell you about my favorite award, actually? Because it was a little bit of a surprise. But it was the Jazzmobile competition in 2007. And it was 4 rounds, so it went week by week by week. And there were a lot of wonderful singers in it. Every week that I kept moving on, I was so excited and surprised. It's actually really special to me because my grandfather, both of my grandparents on my father's side, if you'll remember from earlier, my father's a musician, a singer and pianist. But anyway, both of his parents were became deaf very close in early childhood. So anyway, my grandfather actually came to all the rounds of this competition. He lives in New York. He lived in New York. It was so great for me to be able to have him watch me win the competition week after week, because he could never hear me sing and know that I'm any good.
Yeah.
But like watching me win the competition week after week was so much fun for both of us to share that together. And it really, I know that they worried about me being a musician. Am I going to be able to make a living? And, am I going to be successful? And my father is a wonderful musician, but hasn't really made his living that way and has had, some hardship because of it. So I feel like in that moment, it was very validating for me with my family, and to be able to share that with my grandparents was really exciting. So.
Right on. That's a great story.
It was a lot of fun. And I mean, how great that a win got to be protracted over the course of a month. It was usually you just go up and you win and you leave and it's over. But this was like, I don't know. It was very exciting.
That's cool. That's very cool. So you've been compared to the legendary Sarah Vaughan and Anita O'Day. So let me ask you this. Who are your jazz heroes?
Sure. I love probably foremost, and this isn't in order of, let's just say they're out of order, but except for Shirley Horn. I'm a huge, huge fan of Shirley Horn. And I feel like she does that I love so much is really leave incredible amounts of space where you can really sink yourself down into what she does, and just relax and enjoy her words.
Let me ask you this, too. If you could go, I'm going to ramp this nostalgia up a little bit. If you could go into a time machine, a Jazz DeLorean, and witness a show live, where would you go and who would you see?
I never got to see Ella or Sarah live, which is really a shame because I could have seen Ella when she died in '94 when I was in high school. I never got to see either of them live. And I did get to see Shirley Horn and Betty Carter live, Betty Carter is also one of my heroes, but I think I would like to see them. On another, I haven't thought that much about them, but the shows that I really am sad that I never got to see Bob Marley perform or Led Zeppelin perform, and those are two of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
And to have been able to be at some of those concerts would have been just incredible. But I feel so lucky to be at least even my age, because the students that I teach now, like we're losing, every year we lose more and more of sort of the original people, and even that second generation of people who, like, Shirley Horn is not Billie Holiday. I never obviously got to see Billie Holiday, but but I was able to see Shirley Horn. So, but now that whole generation of people is just going to be gone from them. But I mean, at least we're in an era where we have recordings and videos, so it's so great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have loved to be at a Bob Marley or Led Zeppelin concert.
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been amazing for sure. I'm going to get into the kind of the teaching component of this interview here, and I want to ask you before I get into your teaching, what teachers in your life gave you advice that you still think about to this day? Not your favorites, but just things, anecdotes that still boil around in your mind.
I think the best person at that, and he's still keeping it live, is Todd Kuhlman. He's an incredible professor. He ran the SUNY Purchase jazz program for many years, and actually he was at William Patterson when I was there, and we both left at the same time. So I got to have him for a teacher for a year. One of the pieces of advice that maybe is not the most overarching and epic, but really has helped me, is that someone told him, I didn't come to New York to raise nobody. I forget which jazz musician it was that said that to him, but he passed that on to us. And it's like, I think we, as people who are sort of naturally teachers and want to help other people, I think it's really important just to focus on yourself and not to give unsolicited advice, either to maybe a band leader who didn't really do a great job with the logistics, or maybe, so many times I've heard maybe people sing and I think, gosh, if they would only do this, it would really, I could see a simple change that they could make that would make a huge impact. I don't know. I don't want to make a generalization, but, I'm a Jewish girl. We like to see things be right. It's I don't know, or we like to help. We're helpful. We want everybody to be great. The service in a restaurant. Gee, if you guys just could do X or Y or Z, the service in this restaurant would be so much better. But you know what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Right. And it's the same with the singing. And so I feel like if I hire somebody that doesn't really work out for me because of maybe something that they did, unless there's some personal connection, we're already friends, I just don't call them again. It's okay. I didn't come to New York to raise nobody. Just taking care of my own business. And I think that's probably kept me out of a lot of trouble.
Very nice.
And he has so many great stories, that he's a master storyteller and comedian. I love his perspective, and he's very philosophical, and he loves the music, and he played with so many of the greats too, that he has a really great perspective to share with the students.
I'm going to turn that around on you as a teacher. What is your philosophy with your students?
Oh, yeah. And isn't it amazing that I get to be a teacher with all that I just told you about how much I love for it to be right? I swear, when I get to help people, do amazing things like sing in tune and, tell the story of the song without affectation, that's my big one, because I feel like so many people think jazz is jazzy, and it's like the opposite of jazz. I mean, jazzy, like jivey, jazzy, kind of like, hey, we're so cool, is like anti-jazz, because jazz is about your personal expression with the music, and if you're singing with a jazz accent, some kind of Frank Sinatra accent or Billie Holiday accent, then it's not a true expression. So I feel like my greatest effort in the studio are put forth, A, into proper technique, because that's really important to me, to have an instrument that works and that you can rely on, and B, then to sort of peel away the layers of anything that you might be doing that's not genuine, that's an affectation. And I can't tell you, but how many times my students have made me cry in the studio because they get to that place, and to hear somebody be vulnerable and unaffected with, in their delivery, it doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be honest, and it's so effective when you can find that place. And I feel like that's, if I have one contribution to give as a teacher, if my students go out into the world and are singing with integrity, and good technique, I'm without, drawing unnecessary attention to themselves, you know what I mean? Just being good and just serving the songs, I feel like I will have, contributed something great to the world.
Beautiful. That's great. Let me ask you this, a general question for you. Why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because of its improvisatory nature. I feel like you can do the song any number of different ways, and you change it up according to, your feelings about the lyric, what you hear from the accompanying instruments. For a person who's like sort of acting improv and that kind of thing. It's a very, I don't know, it's very fun, and it really enables me to express myself as I'm feeling in a given moment. You know, I have things that I do on certain songs that I might do over and over again, especially on a particular arrangement. But the fact that I'm not boxed in, I don't have to do them, and I have the leeway, you know, to do whatever I want that makes sense with the song, you know, that is my genuine expression. It means that over the time of performing a song, I can dig deeper into it and find new aspects and perspectives that I might not have, you know, had initially. And that for me as an artist is like, I don't know, the ability to grow with your material, yeah. I feel like is really available in jazz. And I love improvising. I love soloing and scatting and arranging, and it's all there for you in jazz.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like the first time you gave your autograph out?
That I don't remember, but I do remember a very interesting transition that happened to me maybe 5 years ago when people used to say, "Oh, Alexis Cole, I've heard of you." And I would say, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, sure. That's great. You must be confusing me with some other Cole because there are many of us." And but then that was sort of prior to about 5 years ago. And then kind of something happened. Like, you know, I released a bunch of CDs between 2009 and now, about one a year actually, between Venus Records and Motema Music. And I've just been, WBGO has been playing me, and I've gotten good press. And, you know, nowadays if somebody who's in the scene says they haven't heard of me, I have the opposite feeling, which is like, well, what rock have you been under? You know, really, you haven't heard? Which is, I mean, I'm not like, you know, famous in the world, like, you know, Diana Krall or anything like that. But I feel good that at least, you know, jazz people in New York, you know, the other musicians know me. And I remember a time in my freshman year at University of Miami when they went around the room and asked everybody, like, what's sort of the core of your ambition in music? What do you hope to gain? And, you know, a lot of people were saying, well, I really want to be famous. Like at least they were being honest, I guess. And when it got to me, I thought about it and I said, I really want to be respected. I don't know. It's very important to me. Maybe I'm like a gangster at heart. I just want respect. but it's really like such a satisfying thing to me that musicians that I respect know me and respect my work. And honestly, that's the most satisfying thing that I could think of, because like to have your peers who are very critical to scrutinize your work and to come up on the positive end of that, it really feeds me even more than it would be to be famous and know that I didn't have the respect of my peers and the other musicians that I respect. That's not exactly the answer to your question, but it's along the lines.
That's a great answer. No, I love that. That's a wonderful answer. What I want to do is I want to ask you one final question, and it's this. Everybody has a version of who you are. Your family does, your friends do, the fans in the crowd, business associates. But who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? That's my subtle way of leading into that question. Who do you think you are?
Just who do you think you are, Alexis Cole? I think first and foremost, I'm like the world's most Aquarius, and we always think that we're the most original people. It's just sort of part of being an Aquarius. But I really feel like I'm an amalgam of my experiences, and I'm a big adventurer, and I've traveled so much. I lived in Japan for, you know, a year and a half, over 2.5 years doing piano lounge, and I was on a cruise ship for a year, and I lived in Ecuador as a professor at the Berkeley School down there. I went to India to study classical singing. I was on a cruise ship for a year, and then I joined the military for 7 years and sang with the big band at West Point and had to go to basic training and be part of that culture. And I feel so lucky that all these experiences have come to me, and that more importantly that I've said yes to them when they've come. Because getting to see, and I did like years where every summer, for the whole summer, I would go and hitchhike across Europe and busk, like sing in the streets. All that has really like given me a lot of perspective that I hope I can share with my students. And I feel like I can now be in one place and be satisfied. I don't need to be just traveling around for the sake of travel. So I'm really glad that I did that when I did in my 20s, because I don't have time to do it now. Who do I think I am? I don't know. I'm kind of a hippie, but I'm also a person who's in the military. So I'm a lot of contradictions, I think. And I just want to make good music and eat good food and go biking and live a happy life.
Maybe you're part,
and share the joy of the music, you know?
Sure. Well, you might be part Libra then. I mean, you got the yin and yang going on there. So. But,
yeah, I'm not sure what my rising sides are.
Well, that's perfect. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Alexis, thank you for opening up your world a little bit to me and to my audience, and good luck with everything.
Oh, thank you so much for all you do, and for your listeners too. If nobody was listening, it would all be very self-indulgent, wouldn't it?
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Alexis for her time, her music, and that jazz journey. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.